everyone, I'm Rather Incoherent, and today I want to talk about Joe Diamond, who I played as a big hand flex deck in a Franken campaign. Now, a Franken campaign, what it is doesn't really matter, but to explain it to you, it's when you take your favorite scenario 1, your favorite scenario 2, favorite scenario 3, blah, 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 all the way down the line, and you just play them in order in standalone mode instead of following a campaign format. We did this because we couldn't decide on a campaign to play. There were a couple of specific campaigns we wanted to play just for one scenario, so rather than playing all of Dunwich just to play Lost in Time and Space, we decided to just make a Franken campaign. The details of that campaign don't really matter, but I will say that because the finale was Dunwich, I put in Hunter's Armor, specifically customized for more health, because I needed to be able to soak 10 meat damage or I might just die. Now, Hunter's Armor isn't the only thing where this deck was getting sabotaged by the campaign we were playing. My table plays really fast and loose with the rules. We're all optimizing, and that made every scenario take minimum 2 hours, so we started getting fed up with it and playing faster and looser with the rules over time. Until we were eventually like, look, if you need to retcon your action because you forgot to trigger a cigarette case, no one cares, just do it. I'm not gonna watch your table, I'm not gonna worry about it. And before we knew it, we're all taking our opening turn at literally the same time without communicating with each other. Like, we're so fast and loose with the rules that it's actually probably getting problematic and we need to rein it back in. However, one part of that I don't disagree with at all is we allow people who are having a really bad time with their character to just full mulligan their character. Like, if you die, I'm gonna say fuck you, come back with 0 experience. But if you're just playing a character and you haven't died and you're not taking trauma, but you're having a bad time, we're not gonna make you have a bad time or punish you with an experience loss to switch characters. Just change, we don't care. And I originally made this as a flex character, planning to use Machete, Michael Lay, and the mysteriously absent survival knife, level 2 of course, to flex really effectively. Because one of our other characters, I don't remember the full team, but one of them was a Kaimani. I think they were flex, and I was thinking we're basically playing triple flex. I need to flex towards fighting harder, and Joe's really good at that, so I'm gonna bring Joe. And in scenario 3 or 4, our Kaimani was like, guys, I don't wanna do this anymore. Can I change? And I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. They changed to fucking Tony Morgan. So like, I went from needing to flex really hard for fighting and going for survival knife 2s to why'd I even buy Machete? What am I doing? It was really unfortunate for this Joe deck that like the job I wanted just stopped being available halfway through the campaign. So bearing in mind that my teammates don't love me and this campaign isn't real, how did this Joe deck do with the deck entirely stacked against it, from random Dunwich finale forcing Hunter's Armor to teammates just character swapping to ruin my role? How did it do in spite of that? The same as every Joe deck. If you've seen me talk about Joe, it's the same, they're always the same. You can't make a different Joe deck. So here's the issue, right? Like, you set up, there's too much setup, so you run Ever Vigilant, cool, you spend your experience, you get your cards, you play them all, you do things. And the issue is that even when you're using Ever Vigilant, you're like, cool, I Ever Vigilant out Dr. Milan, Malay, Machete, and then I play Magnifying Glass, and I investigate at 6 to 4 twice. Like, it sounds like you're doing stuff. You get an enemy, you hit him for 2 reliable numbers, you can tap Michael Lay to hit him for 3. It sounds like these numbers are reliable and you're doing stuff. On paper, I look at this and it's fine. Like, maybe I didn't want to run Archive of Conduits, but that's not a big deal. But then when I sit down to actually play the character, and I'm trying to get Lab Assistant and Bandolier and a Dream Diary all into play, and the setup time's getting bigger because I need to survive the Mythos phase because these stats are terrible. Oh, quick heads up about the Hunch deck. My one card that's not actually in the Hunch deck would have been Crack the Case. On paper, this character is so cool. The setup time's not that bad because of Ever Vigilant. With a Tooth of Bastille and a Dream Diary, you're testing at 7 in the Mythos phase, you're just safe. You have a Machete with Michael Lay with double reliable, you're swinging at 8 for 2. For a flex, that's great. You're investigating for clues at decent numbers, and you have Practice Makes Perfect deduction cycling on what will be a relatively small deck because of all the draw I have down here. I have Safeguard too, so I can just never move. I can just get rid of that action. That's great. Like, there's so much going on here that seems really solid on paper. And I sit down and I play him, and I spend just enough time setting up. I am just inefficient enough at fighting with Machete. I am just barely not incredible in every front, especially when you come down to level 0. The level 0 deck has much more problems. At level 0, like, you're not gonna solve Archive of Conduits and Dream Diary in one scenario. You're just gonna have a dead Archive of Conduits for multiple scenarios. You have like a lot of the same stuff going on. You have to end the thick of it for Ever Vigilant and Reliable because your fist is just 5 with his machete. It's not good enough. You don't have Charisma for Milan and Lab Assistant. The deck's much jankier at level 0. You're running Inquiring Mind and Take the Initiative because the Dream Diary is not online, so you're not as Mythos vulnerable, but you're also just like not as proactive in any fashion as the higher experience version of the deck. Across the campaign, I always felt like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. I wasn't in major risk of dying, I was meaningfully fighting when I needed to fight, and I should have had to do that more often because of Tony, but that's not a point against the deck. I just like, if I had Survival Knives, right? If I could just have one turn where I like practice makes perfect in Induction, engage a guy, hit him with machete, Survival Knife in the enemy turn. But that never happened. I never had a turn where I was like cleanly doing both roles. There's this harsh divide between macheteing or doing the clue stuff. And machete can't swing over, which is my main weapon, and for a flex, that kinda sucks. That if I'm ever helping someone else, I would need to engage. It's so close to being good. There's just enough jank inherent in how I fight, just enough other shit I'm doing than just finding clues. It's not bad. You can't make a bad Joe deck. And it's pretty easy, I would say, to make a good Joe deck, but I just cannot find a great Joe deck. I can't make it happen. Neither can our Joe main. This is just yet another in the endless train of Joe exercises that have failed to yield any results. Like, I think he's a good character. I enjoyed playing the deck. I'd have enjoyed it more if Tony hadn't shown up. But man, I cannot get Joe to do his one job. I misspoke there, but it's indicative of the problem. Other characters tend to have one job. Joe has 3. Use your fist, use your book, make these stats not kill you. And there's just not enough time in a scenario to do all 3. And as I'm already running Ever Vigilant, I'm not sure how I could make that take less time. So going forward from here, when I look at Joe in the future, I'm not going to be looking at Flex Joe anymore. I'll look at like literal main fighter Joe that's getting clues with dead actions like fighters sometimes do. I will look at pure Clover Joe. But I think this is the final nail in the coffin for me. I've seen many other Flex Joes. I think I'm over Flex Joe. You look at his stat line, and it's hard to believe that this character shouldn't be a Flex character. But I think what I'm looking for is someone who's only technically Flex. I'm looking for a main fighter that happens to get clues. I'm not looking for a genuine Flex character with Joe anymore. I'm over it. I'm over trying to be a genuine Flex character just because the stat line's telling me to. Because 17 assets and 2 copies of Ever Vigilant is, like, you understand when you put it in those terms and stop talking about what the cards do, that, like, the deck is just fundamentally not working. Also, I would like to find a non-Dream Diary 2 the Vestili way of beating the Mythos deck, because I genuinely felt like Dream Diary just on its own testing at 6 to Mythos. Like, there's a lot of -3s, there's a lot of 4 checks. There's -4s, there's Curse Cascades. You're not even really safe to a -4 on most Mythos checks if you just Dream Diary. So like, since I'm putting 2 the Vestili in the deck because it's drawing cards, it's making me safe to many more tokens on many more checks, the setup gets worse. And that's just the summary of Joe. Whatever you do to get better, the setup gets worse. So I'm gonna figure out a single roll Joe. I'm gonna lean on a single roll with tempo cards and less setup, because I cannot get these setup heavy Joe decks to work. I've seen them fail before, now I've played one for myself, and despite optimizing it as best as I can, I just can't get it done in time. I set up too long. I'm not doing enough on the fight front to be impressive and worth the time of flexing, and the fact that I'm self-sufficient is neat, but it doesn't actually mean anything. Anyways, that is it for Joe. I covered the level 0 deck relatively briefly. Here it is again if you want to see it, but it's because, like, the level 0 deck is just using skills to make up for not having Dream Diary. It's just worse at everything in fairly obvious ways. It's less interesting. It's also very similar. I love Joe, and I'm gonna play Joe again. I'm gonna see Joe played again, because this stat line is an enticing puzzle that feels worth solving. But at least at the current state in the card pool, I'm not even convinced it's a solvable puzzle. Because, like, to solve the puzzle, right, you have to make a great character. You can't just do your job and be pretty good. The character isn't solved until it actually feels really, really strong. And so far, we've just come up with like 10 different incorrect answers on how to build Joe. Maybe next time. And because I'm a smooth-brained lizard man pretending I know how to play card games, I forgot to do an outro, so here's my late-night editing outro. Thank you for watching. Thank you to my Patreon supporters who make this channel feel more worth running, because it is literally more worth running. I greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one.